This is Extra Paycheck Podcast, episode number 48.
You're listening to Extra Paycheck Podcast, where you will learn how to build and grow your own successful online business. Now, here's your host, Alex Soul.
Welcome to yet another episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. This is episode number 48, and today's special guest is Jason Moore from ZR2Travel.com, where Jason helps people to travel more, to spend less, and to keep making money while traveling. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the Extra Paycheck Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Jason, please tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is that you do as a business right now?
I guess like a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays, I do a mix of a lot of different things. Doesn't it feel like you're wearing like 16 different hats every day?
Totally. More than that.
And it's hard to switch gears sometimes. But yeah, I have a few different things going on, I guess. The first online business I started was for the event industry, actually, for the experiential marketing industry. So, Alex, have you ever seen like the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile or that giant hot dog thing that drives around the U.S.? Mm-hmm. Well, I used to work in that industry. So I started a company that is a bit of an eBay company for that specific industry, buying and reselling different vehicles. So that was my first foray into, I guess, digital nomadism. And yeah, after that, I started ZR2 Travel. So I have a podcast with the same name and some projects associated with that, including a community, Location Indie, which is a community of digital nomads and travelers. We're just trying to hook everybody in. That's kind of part of that scene. And I know you're taking off on a trip soon, so we're going to have to chat with you about that. And then we do actually a yearly kind of educational products bundle called the Paradise Pack, which is for intended to help people live, work, and travel anywhere. So we kind of get a whole mix of all of the different travel skills and business skills you would need to pull this off, which, as we already mentioned, are a lot of different things. So, but I love it. It's super interesting because there's always something new to learn, right?
Yeah, totally. So, Jason, is ZR2 Travel your main concentration right now?
It depends on the day, if my event business is kind of hopping, because that can be seasonal, and it can also, it's client oriented. I work with agencies and brands, so if they need something, they tend to need it fairly quickly. So if I check the email there and there's a bunch of stuff going on, I could get sucked into that for a few hours. But for the most part, yeah, I spend the majority of my time focused on ZR2 Travel, building the podcast, and essentially travel publishing.
Mm-hmm. And because from the beginning of the podcast, I thought that you started with that event business, but you're not running it anymore, but I guess you still are.
Yeah, it's still around. We just did actually a webinar for our community, and it was basically me kind of unveiling or taking them behind the curtain of this business, because it really is a 4-hour work week business for the most part. And certain weeks it can be more, but if you averaged it all out, it's probably less than that. And I remember when I, probably like you and many other listeners out there in this world, first read The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, I was like, whoa, I can travel and do this? That's so cool, And I remember Tim had done it to travel, so I thought that was an extra layer of cool. But it seemed like something that would be really hard to build. And then I kind of realized recently, holy crap, I have a 4-hour work week business. That's pretty sweet. So my original side hustle, when I started becoming a digital nomad and kind of traveling and bringing the work with me, I was consulting pretty much full time. And the event business was my side hustle. And now the event business is kind of like on the side for my main thing, which is ZR2 Travel. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is pretty interesting. And what I love and kind of hate about the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, well, I love the thing, and why I'm talking about hate here, because I feel that a lot of people kind of fail to read the book properly and to understand it properly. And there's a lot of hate towards this book, especially on places like Reddit.com.
Yeah.
A lot of people are saying, well, like that's a bunch of bull. You can't build a business on 4 hours a week. That's like impossible. And I tend to agree with them, but the difference to me is that you can run a business on 4 hours a week, and if you built it using like the suggestions of the book, let's say, if you build your business properly, you can lead it up to a 4 hour a week business, but totally you'll have to invest more time and more effort at the very beginning, especially when starting a business. And sometimes you could spend like 20 hours a day trying to launch something, trying to get it built. But once it's running, and once again, if it's set up properly, you can totally do that from 4 hours a week.
Yeah, it is a hot button issue, and I agree with you. I mean, I actually talked about this in the webinar I did. We have these members only webinars for our location indie community, and I told them, there are all these caveats like, well, yeah, it's a 4 hour week business now, but I have like 15 years of relationships in the industry. You know what I mean? So you can't discount all of that. My point there was like, leveraging your existing network, for example, or so a lot of times people ask me, well, my industry isn't location independent, so how can I get involved with something that allows me to be able to work from anywhere? And the event industry is something that, it's like totally location dependent. You have to be at the event physically there, and that's what I did for many years. But yet I think if you look at the opportunities in an industry, you can always find some kind of angle or way to kind of slip in there and create something that is based more online that can help people in that industry. But I agree with you. I mean, on the front end of building a business like that, there are all these things that people don't talk about a lot or that are intangible. And I think that just being transparent with that, like, if you have all these relationships, you have all these different things, that doesn't really, you have to factor that in to the idea of what you built. And my business, it's funny because I ran through this when I was putting it together. I was like, this is this sounds like it's the worst business ever on paper, Like I actually took a screenshot of my traffic. It was like 0, 4, like one day was 46 because I think I sent out like an email newsletter or something,
Mm-hmm.
Like I have like no social media, no good traffic. Like I don't have Twitter, nothing, It's just good old fashioned like relationships and like providing good service when leads come through. And it's kind of unique in that way. So once I broke it all down and realized like I don't have a lot of the traditional stuff, then you realize, well, this is kind of a revelation I came to in business is it's great, especially internet business. Like it's great to know the rules and to study them and to understand like copywriting and, all these core skills that you need to have. But then the rules so you can then break them. You know what I mean? It's like musicians, like music has rules. You could play in this key or whatever, but then obviously the best artists in the world or creative bands or just bands that you love will like break those rules. Like they'll switch keys or they'll jam out on like some totally different instrument. The rules of music are there, but they're always broken all the time creatively by different bands. I think it's the same thing with business, or it can be the same thing with business. So if you take like the 4 hour work week, Tim says, well, you have a product that's $50 to $200 and like all those rules like that can certainly work, but there's like billions of other combinations of things that could work too,
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you on breaking these rules. And the key here, I think, is knowing why you're breaking that rule and how you're kind of compensating for it. What else you're doing, or I guess something like that. It's not just it's not, to me, it's not just about breaking the rules. It's about breaking the right ones and putting something else into different rules. So it's juggling stuff around, as you said, but it does take that knowledge and experience that you build up over the time.
Yeah, I think also not getting and everybody does this, like you get hung up on this idea that it has to be a certain way, right? Just a couple people I've talked to recently, they just make the assumption like the first thing you have to do when you start an online business is build a website. But it's not necessarily, that might sound shocking to some people, it's not really necessarily the first step, depending on what kind of business you're going to start. Your first step might be, it most likely should be reaching out to people and figuring out what it is they need and what you're going to sell. You know what I mean? It's probably good old fashioned business development and relationship building and trying to get in touch with, higher level contacts in your industry so you can understand what you're getting into and understand how to position your offer and everything like that. Not to go too far into like down this rabbit hole, but I just think we can get caught up in, especially in the online world, you see all these people, oh, I'm blogging and this, I got this business. And, you just assume, okay, I have to build a website and I have to have a huge email list and all these things. And sometimes if you just take a step back and try to look at it a little bit more open-minded, you might see that there are different ways to build and construct things, and they don't have to necessarily go in the order that we all assume they do. You might want to remix that order a little bit around, and that might even allow you to build an even more successful business more quickly.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've built a whole bunch of websites and lists since 2007 when I started my online marketing venture, if you will. And just recently, in maybe June or July of last year, 2015, I started selling a physical product with my girlfriend on Etsy and Amazon, right?
Yeah, cool.
And we still barely have a website that's like 10% finished.
Yeah.
And you can't even order through the website. I mean, the order links take you to, either Etsy or Amazon, depends. So that was like a big one for me, a big rule breaker, because I've never done anything online without having like a proper website first, with a building email list and everything. And then comes this product that I don't even care about the website. I'm just doing it because, we're building a brand. So I'm like, well, it'll be good to have a website somehow around it when I have some time to work on that website. But otherwise, it's, my traffic, all the traffic to the product comes through Amazon Marketplace. And that's the beauty of using that marketplace. People go there to shop. They go there with their wallets open already, right? They're ready to pay.
Yeah.
So it's totally different ball game. And that's something, well, once again, it's breaking rules, as you mentioned. That's, website is the last thing I need here because I don't really care about the website. And I know that people aren't looking for this brand. At least, they aren't looking for it, so they just find it on Amazon or on Etsy. They purchase there, and it's done. It's finished there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just leveraging the existing platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Love doing that.
I mean, yeah, for sure. And the rules, we keep saying break them or whatever, but it doesn't even have to be breaking them. Sometimes the rules are just like a bit of an illusion, and it's just trying to see what fits into and how it fits into what you're trying to do in your market.
Yeah. And Jason, could you tell us a little bit more about ZR2 Travel? How did that get started, and when actually? When did you start that?
I started it in 2013. I believe it was the fall of 2013. I would have to go back and see when exactly the first iteration of the site went up, but it was somewhere around the fall of 2013. And I've just always been into travel. It's something I've done for many years. And I started traveling. I was like a lot of people, I came out of school and I had college debt, and I was like, how am I going to pay this off and see the world? Because this seems really hard, So anyway, I had like $20,000, over $20,000 in debt. And I was, back at my mom's. I didn't have a car or anything. I'm like, this is a drag. Like, I want to do all this traveling, but I haven't really been anywhere, and I don't even know how to do it. And this was the late 90s, Alex, not to date myself too much, but there weren't all these blogs and like all these places you could go and see, oh, that person's doing that. And that's what, all these people are doing it, and I'm not weird, So I just didn't know what I was doing. And I just committed to, at one day, I was like, I'm going to make this travel thing happen no matter what. So then I started reverse engineering my job search. And instead of looking for jobs where, I would maybe work and then save money and go traveling, I was like, why don't I just look for jobs that allow me, that like require me to travel so I can get paid while I'm traveling? And that's how I ended up in the event industry. And then I worked in like music. I was a tour manager for a band for like later in my touring career. And then I did, I was an adventure tour guide one summer. So I always had these jobs that allowed me to travel. And then I transitioned to some of the, online business, digital nomad, work for yourself while you travel stuff. So, I started recognizing there's like all these different ways to travel, and they're so interesting, and they all can fit into your life in various ways depending on like your current interests and where you are in your life right now. So I was like, wouldn't it be really cool to create something that shares and explores all of these different ways people can travel? So it could be like an a la carte menu where they could come in and learn about, house sitting, for example, or learn, which is a way you can stay around the world for free, or learn about travel hacking and how to get cheap flights, budget travel tricks, or you can learn about this particular travel job industry or how to start a business in travel if you're interested in that. So that's where the genesis of the site came from. And I'm really passionate about just sharing those things with people, because I remember how I felt when I was back on that couch, like, how do I do this? Like, I don't know where to start. And just the idea that you can match it with what your interests are right now, because, like, who were you 4 years ago versus now? You're like, you're the same person, but you have different interests, right? Mm-hmm. So depending on what it is, you got to try to match it up. But the one thing that's constant is the love of travel. And most travelers are going to, like, when you love travel, you kind of love it your whole life. You know what I mean? You don't like wake up one day and you're like, you know what? I hate travel. I think it's boring. You're a traveler. I mean, you're taking off on a trip here, right?
Yeah. I love that, and it's a little bit different. I don't know if it's different for me or I'm just imagining. How should I put it? I love traveling, but when I do travel, I usually do it for extended periods of time. So let's say like 4, 5, 6 months or more at a time.
Yeah.
And when I come home, honestly, I don't want to travel. When I'm back home, I'm happy to be back. And, it lasts for a while. And usually on like, I would say about 2-3 months in, this is when it starts to kick in again. And you start thinking, okay, yeah, no, I love it. I'm home. My family's here. My friends are here. It's all like comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
But I need to get on the road again.
You get the itch.
Yeah. So it's like, I agree with you that it's not something that goes away, and I think my first real travel was, without a parents, and it was pretty far. So I live in Montreal right now. This is where I'm based.
Yeah.
And have been for the past 15 years or so. And the first trip that I took was in 2008 in the summer. I went to Holland and I went to Germany, and it was a really short trip. It was like 2 weeks. And that kind of like really kicked in. I was like, oh my God, this is like so amazing. Discovering places and people and just doing that. I completely fell in love with it. And that was almost 8 years ago, and kind of hasn't stopped. That passion hasn't stopped since. It's every year if you don't travel, the years that I don't travel, I feel like so bad. I feel like something in my life is really missing. So yeah, that's not something that you're gonna wake up one day and be like, nah, that's boring. I'm done with that.
Yeah, that's true. That's interesting. Yeah, it's cool that you carve out those chunks of time to do it, because that's, I think, one of the bigger challenges when you're running a business and you are get comfortable at home. It is a lot harder to run a business. I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier, and you said that you traveled to Europe and one of your businesses fell apart or something.
Like everything I was doing online fell apart. But I let it. Okay. That's the thing.
Yeah. So, but that's that, but you still had that travel experience. And at that time, that sounded like that was the priority for you, right?
Honestly, I don't regret it. And I think I've had stuff going on in my life, personal life, that it kind of not forced me to travel, but made me feel that I need to get away from everyone I know. I just wanted something new. I wanted like a fresh breath of air, I guess, for a while. So I went to Europe for about, I think the total was 9 months. That was in 2010. I think total was 9 months that I was away from home. And I just stopped logging into my stuff and I stopped working completely on my business. And the money was still coming in for a while. That was like a good thing, the recurring income, right?
Yeah.
And that year I had a lot of things. My websites got hacked at some point, and my payments didn't go through because my credit card expired, and I didn't verify that. So I lost like my domain names and my hosting and everything. And it was a mistake. It was a stupid mistake to make from my end. But at the same time, as you said, I guess the travel was the priority back then at that specific moment, and I take it as a lesson. So now when I do travel, I do, I prepare myself a lot better. I do check all my stuff. I make sure that my credit card is current, the one that's on the account. If possible, I renew my domain names for like years in advance, so I don't have to worry about that. And there's like a lot of little things that I think you learn, and it's not just about the travel; it's business in general, right? As the longer you do it, the more you learn about managing it. And I took that whole failure just as a lesson and nothing else. No regrets.
That's really cool, man. I think that's also telling. And like I always tell people, I don't know, like running a business while you travel sounds super sexy, but it's seriously not for everybody, Yeah. Like it's like all of the stuff that comes with business is hard anyway. And then you take it on the road. It has different challenges or different unique challenges. And also, running a business on the road can pull you out of the travel experience. Like if you were running those businesses all the time, think about like some of the things you might have, like the experiences you might have missed because you'd be like running home to go deal with some BS, right?
Yeah, totally.
So like you got to fully immerse yourself in the world. And there's like a lot of value to that too, I think. Do you agree?
Yeah, totally agree. And that's something we talked about it a little bit pre podcast, right before we started recording. We had a little chat, and so all this traveling over the years and all these experiences and being in the business, it has taught me to first of all prepare a lot more before leaving. And as I mentioned to you, I've recorded like 20 plus episodes of the podcast, so I don't have to stress about that while traveling, right? So even before leaving, I try to optimize a lot of things that will make my life easier when I travel, so I don't have to like sacrifice that much. And I know I will. I know that I will have to get up earlier and get work done before even leaving the house, just to make sure that I'm productive, right?
Yeah.
But it's still totally worth it. It's just a different way of doing things. And I have a friend who has traveled to, I think, I'm not sure which number he's at right now, but he's well over 60 different countries. And he calls it travel living because, it's not really traveling what he does and what I'm planning to. It's kind of you live. You go to a place, let's say you go to Thailand and you live there for a month. So you're not on the constant run, which every 2 days you're changing the city and you can't get any work done because you're on the road. So actually you set up a home base kind of for a month somewhere and you live there. So you're kind of traveling in between, but you're also living there at the same time. And then a month later, you change to a new city or to a new country, and you keep doing that. And I think that's something that will work for me, as opposed to, as I mentioned, just running from city to city every single day.
Yeah, that's like, I guess the closest term to define that would be digital nomad, right? Because a nomad's kind of always wandering, and it doesn't say how long you're going to be in one place. It's just that you go to different places.
Yeah, also because you don't really know how long you will be there.
Yeah. It's when you're traveling for a long time, it's just your regular life. You're right. You're not traveling anymore. You're just living, and you happen to be living on the road, which is a whole other different conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're going to Southeast Asia. Are you excited about that trip?
I'm totally excited. I've been wanting to go there for a long time, and
Awesome.
Finally I'm doing that.
Yeah, it's a great place, great spot in the world.
Very cheap as well.
Yes, very affordable.
That's a good part. All right, Jason. So let's get back. We're getting a bit off topic here. Let's get back to ZR2 Travel. Started in 2013. How have you been able to grow it?
Well, the first thing was starting the podcast, and a lot of it is based around the podcast. And I was fortunate to start that in 2013. There weren't as many podcasts, and it wasn't like super early, but it was starting to get in on the whole podcasting is getting popular thing. And if anybody's listening to this and they've like considered starting a podcast before, I mean, I would just say do it. I mean, I don't know how you're enjoying it, Alex, but I've gotten to meet so many awesome people and had so many interesting conversations. And then to get the privilege to share it with people from around the world, it's great. And I always had a hard time writing blog. I mean, I don't mind writing and I'm okay at it, but I like talking to people, you know? And this format suited me, I think. And one of my business philosophies is that I didn't do this strategically, really. I just did it because I wanted to share all these different ways to travel with people. And I thought this would be a cool way to do it, to actually hear from different people that had the experience. And it's much easier to share that. And, you know, with the writing, you don't get the tone, you don't get to hear the stories from the horse's mouth and all that type of stuff. But what I discovered later in hindsight is this idea that, you know, the higher the barrier of entry, the easier it is to break through the noise, right? So there's billions of blogs out there, billions of travel blogs or whatever, but there weren't billions of podcasts. There were a very small amount of travel podcasts. So therefore I was able to, you know, hopefully build an audience and get people listening. And it was very exciting. And like, I was like, wow, I can share my message with a lot of people this way. And they're getting a lot of value out of it. I'm getting nice emails from them. And we have this community powered show where people are listening all over the world. It's amazing. And I think the podcast was key for that. So whether it's podcasting or YouTube, and I'm not saying don't write or writing's bad or blogging's bad. I just think that's something to think about. You know, where can you kind of put yourself where there's maybe not as much competition and you can break through a little bit.
And I think that podcasting is also great if you approach it seriously.
Yeah.
Because just like blogs, you'll see so many new podcasts being released every single day. And a few months in, they're gone.
Yep.
Because people realize that although it is fun, it is work. And if you want any kind of following for your podcast, in my opinion, the very first thing you need to do is be consistent. Or, you know, relatively consistent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a lot of people fail to do that. A lot of people that start a podcast with the goal of not necessarily monetizing it, but, you know, with goal of building any kind of audience or following, they fail at this because they realize that it's hard to do. And this is where I think people like us come in because we are willing to do the work and we love doing that. So, you know, we'll do better than they would do. And honestly, I think for blogging is the same thing. If you need to be better than others if you want people to read and follow your blog. But totally agree on the fact that there's so many more blogs as compared to podcasts, and it makes it that much easier, I guess, to build a following in the whole podcast industry, because there simply are less people doing that. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also your heart has to be in the right place. Since we're talking about podcasting, it'll become very clear if it's not like your number one mission to be transparent or to share. Or like, I don't know, it depends on what your show's about, I guess. If you're doing a comedy show or something, you're just going to be sort of talking about random topics, so maybe it's a little different. But for shows like ours, we're trying to provide value and just be of service to people that are listening and try to help as many people as possible. You know, it's important to have that authenticity and really have that, I think, heart forward approach. So podcasting wasn't a tactic for me. Again, it was just it seemed like a really cool medium to share these stories. And then, you know, it also turned into a great way to build an audience and all those other things. But that came later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting that you mentioned that, because thinking of starting this very podcast, The Extra Paycheck, I think the podcast itself helped me become a lot more transparent with my readers and listeners. which is, I find it a bit weird. I don't know how to explain it. It just, when it was just a blog, you write and you don't feel that much of a connection, so you don't really care, and there's a lot of things you miss out on. Well, we just talked about when I failed my business quite a bit.
Right.
I didn't feel really comfortable writing about it and explaining it in writing. I don't know why. I don't know how to explain it. But when you talk about it on a podcast, and I think that show I was talking about it all by myself. I didn't have anyone to interview. I was kind of interviewing myself.
Right.
And it was just so much easier to get into details and explain why this happened and what exactly happened and how others could prevent themselves from having that happen to them. I don't know, just podcast. It has changed a lot of things in my business, honestly.
Yeah, it's cool. On this side, hosting one, and then also, I am an avid podcast listener, so consuming podcasts is part of something I do almost every day, and it's a great way to get to know. You really feel like you get to know the people, because you can't do hundreds of shows, or you've done whatever it is now, 50 shows, or you said, or whatever, maybe more by the time this publishes. You can't hide who you are when you're recording hours and hours of audio content. You just are who you are. And that's just the way it is. And we're all just trying to enjoy our days and help each other out. And I don't know, it's just another, I think, great way to do it. So podcasting for me has been hugely important, and I would say it was I'll use a travel metaphor here, but if you were going on a long trip, sometimes it's nice to take the scenic route and wind your way through and spend a couple days, or sometimes you want to get to the destination a little quicker, and I think podcasting, at least for me, was a little bit of that shortcut to build relationships in the travel and publishing industry, and also start things a lot more quickly than I would have if I was just writing.
Makes a lot of sense, Jason. And tell me about that community that you're building around ZR2 Travel, because that's something that not many people do. And that's something that I find really intriguing. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, there are all, like I talked about before, there are all these different ways to travel, and everybody has different interests. So people that are part of our community at ZR2 Travel, not all of them are interested in business. That some of them want to just do volunteering or learn budget travel trips and tips and everything like that. So just trying to provide different ways to support people for the type of thing they want to do. So right now I'm doing a lot of this business stuff. I call it bohemian business. And I'm actually working on a book right now around how to start up a digital nomad business, and I'm just around it so much. And we're working with people in our community. We have a membership community called Location Indie. That's INDIE, if anybody wants to check it out. And we're actually putting together some free training videos that should be out by the time this publishes, so you can grab those and some other freebies if you want. But yeah, it's just it's a membership community, and we've got people that are across the entire spectrum of location independent journey, from people that are just starting out and not sure where to do, to people that are, right now, like this woman, Diane, that's in our community. She's in Bali. Another person, Jean, is out traveling through Southeast Asia. They're just people all over. So that's a really cool way to have a built-in community, different places you go. And just my experience, the reason why I started this community, I started it with Travis, a friend of mine, who is also in the travel industry. We met at a conference, and we both were travel podcasting, doing all this stuff. And we're just like, man, this is really hard to do by yourself all the time. And it's kind of lonely. And we're like, let's get all of our peeps together in one place. And, it's a unique person. I think the person that's kind of building these things and trying to combine it with the travel lifestyle, because it's a different approach, I think, than the lifestyle first approach is a little bit different than, I think, just sitting at home and trying to just focus on ROI for your business, when really the ROI for people that are like in the digital nomad, location independent thing is really going to be on the lifestyle side, or like on the travel side. What are they getting to see? What are they getting to mix in while they're doing this? And like really just getting to set up where your daily life is, you get to be somewhere you want to be, and you get to be out on the road doing the things you want to do. But also recognizing that comes with tons of challenges. And that's why the community is there, to get the support and the accountability, and just to be around that like-minded energy and all those people doing it. So it's very cool. I could go on and on about it, but I'll shut up now.
And Jason, a question that a lot of listeners of this very podcast would be interested in hearing your answer. How are you monetizing ZR2 Travel?
Yeah, so there are a few things. It's a travel publishing company, and one thing I think is important if you're listening and I don't know if your listeners, what types of businesses people have. If you're approaching anything to do with blogging, I think the important thing is to recognize you're not building a blog, you're building a business, and the blog is just the marketing arm for your business, right? So what services and types of products you're going to offer. So, with ZR2 Travel, I have an audio course. I have a book that was a bestseller on Amazon, so that was nice. I published a book with my friends Nat and Jody called International House Sitting: How to Travel the World and Stay Anywhere for Free. So that's on Amazon. So we're building up a catalog of Amazon books to help people travel in different ways. So that's a huge part of what I want to do at ZR2 Travel, is keep creating content that can help people. And then if they want to go deeper, really having those resources available, whether they're books or courses or anything like that. And then, of course, we have the community Location Indie, which is sort of the business spin-off of that, and the Paradise Pack, which is the bundle I mentioned earlier. So those are the main ways that I monetize the whole travel deal, I guess, the travel publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously the event business is a supplement to that.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is great to hear. I love interviewing people like you, because there are so many ways to create that income online, especially. It's incredible. And I love people sharing it, because I know some of the listeners to this podcast, they're new to the whole idea of online business or entrepreneurship in general, right? And they heard this one thing somewhere, that you could make money by, having ads on your website or something.
Yeah.
And they kind of get stuck on that. And they know that, well, in order to have to make any kind of decent money with that, you need like so much traffic, and people need to click on your ads. And then they hear these kind of episodes and they're like, oh, wait, that's not the only thing. I could also do this and that and that and that and that. And I think it helps some people find the proper venue for them. It helps them figure out what they would prefer to do in order to make that money, especially when it comes to making it online. And so, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, no problem. I think if you are just starting out, I would say look at, like we talked about before, look at the existing platforms, and then what are those high barrier things? Like I'll take Amazon, for example. If I create a book and put it on Amazon, it's hard to write a book and put a book together. Like most people won't do it. And if you want it to be good, most people won't do it. But then when you do, and you put it on a place like Amazon, you're at least giving yourself the opportunity to reach literally, hundreds of millions of people, as opposed to, being passive about your business and trying to, write some articles and hope that people come and maybe they'll click on some ads someday or something. It's like putting yourself in the situation where you have an opportunity to actually make it work. Like Etsy is great for artists, because that's an existing platform. People can find your stuff, and you're like, you can literally be selling something in a day. So the best thing I did, I was like the idea guy for a while, Alex. I didn't want to take the action, because it was just more fun talking about all the wacky ideas, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually you actually just have to just do something, even though it might not work. And I did start a blog and it didn't work, and that was okay, because I learned how to use WordPress, and I learned how to write, and I learned a lot of things, So I think just by doing, you learn so much, and it's important to just not over research or not overthink it, and just give it a go.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is, a very important part of it. And over researching, it's going to complicate things. And I think it's also going to take a lot of valuable time away from you, because once you start digging really deep into something, you could spend years looking through the information.
Yeah. It's a never ending thing if you want it to be. So it's good to put a cap on that.
Yeah. All right, Jason, thank you for sharing all of that. And now I wanted to ask you a hard question here.
Uh-oh.
And let's
come on, man. This is my first time here. You're going to ask me a hard question?
The hardest one ever. And let's talk about ZR2 Travel once again. And I'd love you to share maybe a really, really dark moment for that business, or a very hard moment when you thought maybe it's not worth it and maybe you shouldn't be doing it, yet you push through it. So go ahead, share that moment.
Man, you talking about today or yesterday or the day? No, I'm kidding.
I knew you were gonna say something like that.
No, you know what? This totally isn't a cop out. The dark moments don't really come from the business, because I really believe I feel like I'm in the river of like whatever, where I'm supposed to be, like I'm on the flow of like what I'm supposed to be doing in life. I really feel that. It took a while to get there. So having a business like ZR2 Travel, where it's like approaching it in this service mindset where it's like, if I don't feel like getting out of bed one day, like it's just like, or if I don't feel like recording a podcast, or if it's just a lot of work and I'm not up to it, I just have that reminder where it's like, no, I got to like put this stuff out there, because if I don't do this, then there might be like one person that misses this thing at the right time in their life, where like if they heard this podcast or if they read this thing or whatever, it's going to help them do the thing they want to do, and then they can help other people because their life goes in a different direction. It's that whole like we're all connected type of thing. Not to sound too new agey here, but I maybe I am a little bit. I don't know. So I don't know if the dark moments really come from the business, because I know my heart's in the right place and I believe in it. It's more about like being hard on myself, right? And I think that's a continual struggle for me, is like going to bed and I'd be like, oh man, I didn't get enough done, or I didn't do that thing right, or I messed that up and I should have done it this way. And it's like, because you're constantly making mistakes, and it's really hard for like this thing I struggle with the most is trying to feel like I was productive. Even if I never feel like, it's very rare that I feel like that was a productive day. I feel really good about what I got done, because there's just always so much to do. And I just feel like, oh, did I screw around too much or whatever? So that's something I'm trying to figure out, and just make sure I go a little bit easier on myself, because if I was somebody else like talking to me like I talk to myself in my head sometimes, I would kick their ass. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel you, man, 100%. And it happens to me very often as well. It's so rare that I tap myself on the shoulder and be like, well, Alex, job well done. You've done a lot today. And sometimes when I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I've done so much yesterday, and I spent literally like 10 hours in front of the computer working and not watching, not opening a YouTube tab once, actually getting work done. And yet somehow you don't always feel that you've been that productive. And I think a lot of us entrepreneurs, especially online entrepreneurs, get this same problem where you don't know, when enough is enough, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to be enjoying, like, this is the thing too about finding your passion or finding the things you want to do, because that's another thing that I got hung up on, and other people get hung up on too, is like, well, how do I know which thing to pick or whatever? And there's all these fears around that. Like, I'm gonna have to do that forever. What if I don't like it anymore? If it's not my thing? But like anything you pick, you want to try to pick like the whole 80-20 thing, right? Like you want to love like 80% of it, because there's always going to be like a percentage that, like, I can't stand anything related with taxes, it's so annoying, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to transition to a new accountant, and I'm trying to get my ducks in a row and get everything organized. But it's just like, let me just be done with this so I can do the things I like. So there's always like, you run a business, there's always going to be things that kind of annoy you, and then you have to kind of figure out how to come to terms with that and find enjoyment. So I'll try to put on some good music or something and just work through it. And but you want to be able to enjoy most of the things you do, I think, and not look for perfection. That really helps.
Yeah, that is so true. And Jason, one last question for you, equally hard. What would be your most important advice to any beginner entrepreneur?
That hasn't started up or that's running a business?
Actually, I would like to say usually both. Someone who is just thinking about starting up, or someone who did manage to jump into it and get started, but now they feel totally lost because they're not, sure about a lot of things.
Yeah.
So what is that one thing that they should pay the most attention to, or that they should do?
Well, one specific strategy that really helps me, and this is just a very, tactical thing, is before you go to bed at night, just write down the things you need to do the next day, and then try to choose those wisely, because the worst is when you wake up and you don't know what to do. And that used to happen to me in the beginning, because I felt like there was so much to do and I didn't know which things to focus on. So then you sit down in front of your computer and you're just like, okay, what should I do? So spending time at the end of the night prioritizing that and then picking those high leverage things to do first, I think is important. If you haven't started up, it's just getting started and trying something for sure. 100%. That's what I would say. And if you've already started, but you're not sure, I would say just always continually try to take a step back and see it from the airplane view, or I'm using all these travel related terms, I guess. There you go. And really try to make sure you don't get too caught up in what you think you're supposed to be doing because you see like X bloggers doing it or X other person said to do this or whatever. Because a lot of times I think there are really creative ways to make more of an impact and grow your business more quickly if you're just open-minded and open to the shortcuts that might be available, So that might be like, I'll give a specific example. It's, if you're offering, say, a coaching service for, I don't know, what do people offer coaching? Is it diet or health coach or something?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're trying to get clients. So what's more of an effective use of your time? Should you write a blog post and then try to email 1,000 different individual people or whatever? Or should you try to develop a relationship with some successful health coaches who might have, hundreds of clients under them and they can't handle them all, and maybe try to get referrals? Or should you work with a big institution and try to get in touch with the person that heads up the health department and that could recommend you to their 500 people under them? You know what I mean? Instead of trying to find 1,000 individual people, find 5 people that have 1,000 people under them and develop relationships with them. And don't forget, whether it's online or offline business, it's about people and helping people. So don't be afraid. You should be getting on Skype. You should be it's not about sitting behind your laptop and not talking to anybody. That I think rarely works if you want to do it quickly.
Amazing advice, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. And I've seen that done over Facebook groups where people post, something like, I've been doing freelancing for the past, 5 years, and I have way too many clients right now. I want to give some of my clients away to people in this group. And I find that really amazing to see this kind of thing because, well, first of all, people like him, the guy's happy with the money that he makes and the amount of clients that he has. And he feels that he can't provide good enough value for all of the clients because he just doesn't have time for that. And he's willing to give them away.
Right.
So see, once again, it's the point of being in the right group with right people.
Right.
Where you could, kind of benefit from it by helping, because you're helping that person and you're helping their clients as well. It all comes back and it all connects.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you mentioned, that might not be the first thing you think, well, why would this person want to give me their clients? But like, it's about how you're approaching it, right? I mean, first you got to try to develop the relationship in the right way. And you're saying like, hey, that would be of value to you because you don't know what to do with all these people. You want to give them a good place to go. You still want to help them out, but you can't take them on. So if somebody sends you an email and they're like, hey, I want to work with you. Like, let's do this. And you're like, who is this person? I don't even know them. Or if like, hey, you know, if you feel overwhelmed, like, and you're looking for some help, you know, I'd like to learn, if you'd like to learn more about what I do, you know, kind of more like a value-based approach, and then try to get on calls with people and like develop real relationships with them and see them in person. And, you know, it's always a good excuse to travel, right? Go meet somebody or go to a conference or something.
Totally. Great advice, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. And before you go, for people who want to learn more about you, about what you do, about ZR2 Travel, where can they go?
Yeah, probably the best place is ZR2Travel.com because that links out to all the other projects, and that's ZR2 Travel. And then, but if you're specifically interested in the location-independent digital nomad, sounds like your audience does a lot of, obviously, you know, starting businesses. And if you're somebody who's like, hey, I want to add the travel part in with the business and see how that all mixes and hang with those people, locationindie.com. And I have links for that on ZR2 Travel. So pretty much if you go to there, you'll get everything. And then on the podcast, I talk about all this stuff, and you can search ZR2 Travel on iTunes. So that's, you know, I just violated a cardinal rule, is you should only have one call to action, right? At the end.
Well,
go to ZR2 Travel.
ZR2Travel.com. Go there right now. The only call to action needed there. There you go. All right, Jason, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your tips, your advice, and thank you for being on the show.
It was fun, Alex, and I want to say safe travels to you and enjoy your time in Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Extra Paycheck Podcast. As usual, I will be putting up show notes page at extrapodcast.com/48, where you will be able to find resources, links, and other things mentioned in today's episode. Also, head over to extrapodcast.com/iTunes in order to subscribe to the show, leave a rating and a review, which will help me tremendously. Thank you so much once again, and I'll talk to you next Monday.